Sometimes, to get the perfect shot, you have to
Wear your rain jacket,
brave a thunderstorm,
climb a tree,
ride a chairlift,
lay in the grass,
ski up a mountain,
wade through a stream,
hop across rocks,
balance on a rock,
scale a mountain,
with a broken arm.
or while pregnant.
These are all real things we've done to get the shot.
Today, we're talking through how we shot some of our favorite adventure wedding photos, from framing and composition to our settings and use of off-camera flash.
That's right.
We're the Bergreens, a husband and wife photography team. We've been shooting together for over a decade now, 13 years.
Yep.
We put together some of our favorite photos on the computer here, so let's roll through how we shot them and where they came from. This one is one of my favorites of yours, mostly I think because I remember I had to drive you all the way around the Yosemite Valley Loop in order to get to the right spot, not
That's right.
only on this day, but the day before to scout it ahead of time.
That's right.
So what was your vision here?
So my thinking with this image was I wanted to get the kind of iconic reflection of Half Dome in the Merced River there. And I wanted to have a couple in it, but I wanted it to be primarily a landscape image with just a small couple. And so I knew that if I went around to the backside of the bend on the river, I'd be able to get the reflection and the couple. I shot this with a 16-35, and we shot it at sunset when we would have an interesting sky. I believe Brenda is on the beach there with them, kind of indicating how they should walk. Nothing super complicated in terms of posing, but just having them casually walk along the riverbank.
Sometimes we have walkie-talkies when we know that somebody's going to be far away. And I don't remember if in this case, we might have just been able to hear each other across the river. But sometimes Mark will give me signals that tells me what he wants them to do. And then I can relay that to the couple.
In addition, the only other piece of equipment, I think I used my graduated neutral density filter to darken the sky. And that would allow me to expose for the clouds and have some detail left in the river and the foreground.
Yeah, I love this photo. It was taken quite a few years ago, but I still love it today. Let's see what's next. This next one is also Yosemite, and this is one of my photos. Similar sort of concept here is I was going again for that iconic shot of the reflection, this time El Cap. We call this the Ansel Adams portrait spot because there's some famous Ansel Adams photos from this location. And one of the things that I love when I look at that awesome landscape photography is that there's really that like foreground, middle ground, background. And so trying to have some of the rocks in the foreground was interesting to me. Positioning the reflection was kind of hard with the rocks and the grasses.
Yeah.
And then I had to light the couple to expose them so that they would match the lighting on El Cap. And so Mark's standing up and to the right with the flash angled down on them, trying to prevent too much spillover, but the lighting on the grass doesn't really bother me. I think it just helps make it look more natural and helps kind of have this nice contrast in the image. I also shot this with 16-35. That's probably one of our most used portrait lenses, one of our favorite lenses. So that's used here. And then a little bit of a higher f-stop so that we can have everything be sharp, because we're not going for that bokeh effect here. We're going for, sharpness throughout all the detail of the landscape photo that happens to have a couple in it.
Yeah, two other things to mention. I think you used a polarizing filter, which darkens the sky. Mm-hmm. And then I think you also shot it at f5 because 1/200 is the flash sync speed. And so that will allow you to balance the exposure a little bit better. I also like that the direction of the light kind of matches what you see in that highlight on the mountains on the right side. It looks like it could be, it just kind of matches the direction of the sun, even though it's clearly past when the sunlight was hitting that location.
Yeah, and the one other thing to note is this dip kiss is kind of one of our favorite poses, as some couples look really flat when they're just kissing. And so if you just ask them to give her a little dip when you're kissing her, it really has nice lines in her body, which kind of makes that C shape, which just, I think, adds to the photo that they're doing an interesting pose as well, and that her dress looks really good. So sometimes those little details matter too. All right, let's see what's next. I think this is also one of mine.
Yep.
Similar sort of goal for me in terms of having foreground, middle ground, background. A lot of times I think in wedding photography, you see the subject and you don't really see a complete composition. So here, foreground was important. I wanted that rock to be up close and the flowers to be up close, but in this case, it doesn't matter so much that they're sharp. Again, the couple's doing an interesting pose. The wind is doing something nice with her dress. And then the sky looks good, and you can see kind of that classic rule of thirds framing.
Yeah,
1635 again. Anything else?
Yeah, I think I like that you have the flowers in the foreground. It's kind of like that, right against the ground, super low perspective that kind of gives this feeling of uplifting the couple or making them seem like they're above you, like they're cooler than they present themselves normally. And having the foreground not be quite sharp also draws your attention right to the couple.
There's also some like leading lines of the rock is pointing the couple, the clouds is pointing the couple, so your eye is just really drawn into the couple there. But again, that 16 to 35 millimeter lens, that wide angle lens, is really great for adventure wedding photography because it allows you to capture a scene and make it look really epic. I
think the key is to just make sure that your subject is not too close to the edge. Because if you had positioned them further to the edge, it would have kind of distorted them. Because they're so close to the middle, you can shoot at 16 millimeters and still not have them look warped.
Like it. Let's see what's next. Okay, this is same couple, but your shot. Same
shoot, different location, but this is my shot. I just really liked how this last ray of light was coming across this little ridge line. So I had them go step up on the ridge line before we lost the light. And then space each other so that the light would hit both of them. Because if he had come forward and blocked the light from her face, it would have, you can see both of them have nice light on their faces. And if they had positioned themselves differently, it wouldn't have worked. And then I like the contrast between the mountains and the large amount of white space or sky. Yeah, that white space is really key in this photo. And then you also use the 70 to 200. So you were quite a bit further away, especially for them to be that size with the 70. I think you were on a ridgeline on the other side of the road or something. Yeah, I remember backing way up with the 70, which I think is interesting to do. So we often shoot wide images or with a 70 to 200, but this one was kind of a unique situation where I'm shooting with a longer lens, but because I backed up so much, it still kind of has that wide perspective. And then it brings those mountains closer than they would if you shot this with a wider lens too. So the mountains look big. Yeah, you get a little bit of compression. A little bit of compression. So one thing to know about this image, as we go into some of the other images we will use off-camera flash. This one is lit by natural light. That was just actually timed perfectly with the sun to get the nice natural light. Even in some of these future images or in the previous one of the El Cap reflection with the light, we personally still try to make our off-camera flash look natural. So we want, if possible, as natural as possible. So where is the sun actually coming from? Yeah. Where we can add it so that it doesn't look like, there's a flash lighting somebody, but rather using natural light. If we can actually use natural light, that's even better. All right, this next image. I had already kind of captured my vision earlier when we were higher up on this little mountain. And as we were descending and Brenda kind of saw that last little bit of sunlight, I think she had a vision. Yeah, and so we just, sometimes it's not over till it's over. Mark and I have a little bit of a competition about how long a sunset's going to last. And it was just a really pretty moment. You can see in this photo, this isn't a pose. This is actually, hey, go stand up on that rock. And I'm taking the photo as they're getting up on the rock. And I think that that's what helps tell the story in this photo, in addition to, the interesting last bit of sunset that you get there. Yeah, sometimes when you tell people to do things, they'll do it in the perfect way that you couldn't have posed better. Sometimes it doesn't work out and they hike up their dress and do it in an awkward way. But sometimes it works out. Some people are more graceful on rocks than others. Anything else about that one? It looks like a shot 16-35. Nothing particularly interesting in terms of settings. A little polarizing filter as well. Mm-hmm. The other thing to note with polarizer is to watch out for, if you are going to shoot wide, 16 millimeters, You have to make sure that it's not turned to where you get kind of a dark spot in the middle of the sky.
Which you're kind of seeing right here.
You see it a little bit, but it's not too bad.
This one, I think, is
Another of
also
yours?
one of mine. Again, Yosemite. Some of our favorite shots have happened in Yosemite, and I think part of that is that the couples that are eloping in Yosemite really want epic photos, and so they are willing to meet us at sunrise, sunset, hike 10 miles, whatever it takes for them to get the cool shot.
And we know it so well that we can plan out the light perfectly so that we know where to be and when.
Yeah. So again, you've got like some foreground, middle ground, background with the subject. The subject's lit from the similar direction and the similar color temperature as the sun.
That is
So that's
key.
important too, so that their color is matching Half Dome. So it looks like the sun is lighting them and it's lighting Half Dome at the same time, even though we were in the dark.
Yeah, I think we put a half CTO or color temperature orange gel, which is just like a little piece of plastic, on the front of our flash and changed the color to match the sunset.
And now you can change color temperature in Lightroom so easily that we don't use gels as often as we did.
Yeah.
With the editing technology getting so good, sometimes it's faster to do it in post than it is to do it in live. But in general, we try to shoot things, get it right in camera, and
Yeah, so if
save
you
time
can-
on our editing.
If you can plan ahead and make it easier for yourself later, it saves time, but you can also do it easily.
And another thing is, like, we have each other. So, Mark's down there aiming the flash right where I tell him to aim the flash. But if you don't have an assistant or somebody with you, like we've had, a family member hold the flash, or you can sometimes set up your light stand, but it's harder on uneven terrain. So it really helps to have somebody with you if you're going to do off-camera flash to help aim the flash and make sure that the flash is aimed right. And then you can get competitive about whose aim is better. And this is another one, similar sort of look.
This is in Zion.
Zion, the flash is coming again from the upper right. So Mark was in the shot, I'm sure, and we took him out in post.
This was after the sun had already set past the location that we were shooting at. So we kind of shot that classic backlight. We were on our way back to the trailhead. And because the light was so dramatic up on that cliff, it just accentuated the dramatic feel that you get in Zion National Park. And so we shot one last image as we were hiking back.
And I also love that her dress is blowing in the wind. I think it was super windy, so I think we were shooting a bunch to try to get that, like, the right breeze of the dress. And so sometimes you have to shoot a bunch, but with the flash, you have to wait for your flash to be ready for you to shoot again. So again, the 1/200 for the sync speed, that kind of dictates the shutter speed on this shot, because you got to use your flash.
So this is in Sequoia National Park. The couple had specifically requested that they wanted a photo with the Milky Way. So I got it rising over these trees in the background. I had planned out, okay, we need to wait. So basically we did a sunset shoot. Then we waited about an hour and a half, I would say, until the stars were kind of starting to come out. Then I kind of started working with getting the posing, the exposure, and making sure that we would get that Milky Way as it came over the trees. Brenda wasn't actually on this shoot with me.
I think I was like having a baby or something.
Something like that. So I actually had to use a light stand, and I had my backpack weighing down the light stand so it wouldn't fall over on the uneven rock. And then I had to, I think I used 2 of the Magmod grids on top of the flash. Normally we shoot with the 8200, but we use the V860 from Godox, which is just like an on-camera flash, because it would be less powerful. So it's 1/128th, and the key is balancing, the Milky Way with not overexposing the couple. So 15 seconds at ISO 6400 is just enough to bring up the stars, and then on the lowest flash power with 2 grids, it's not enough to blow out and overexpose the couple.
Yeah. And the freezing the motion with the light helps so that they're not blurry, but you still ask the couple to sit still throughout the photo so that there's not that like halo around them.
Yeah, as still as possible. And it also helps if kind of the only way to get a really good Milky Way shot is on a relatively new moon, or when the moon has already set. So having a really dark environment is helpful. It makes it difficult to work with your flash and equipment, but makes it easier to not get blurry images of the couple.
Moving on to the next photo, which is one of mine. And here I had a vision for this photo and I backed way up to get in position and nobody understood what I was doing because I was kind of in a weird spot and it didn't really look like it was cool, but I really liked the idea of these dark trees framing the couple. And again, this is lit with off-camera flash, but I attempted to do it in the direction of that sun was coming. So the sun is hitting the couple, the sun is hitting the trees, the sun is hitting the bit of the peaks. That's one of my favorite things of nature, and framed by those dark trees. I love this photo, and it was one of those where I had a vision for it and then created it, and then afterwards everybody was like, oh, I see what you were doing.
Yeah, we were kind of waiting for the sun to hit and creating some light subject on a dark background images prior to that sun coming up so that we could make them stand out really well from the backdrop.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's see what the next. Okay, so next image is my version of the shot right after the sun came up and hit the grass. So it's almost the same location, but once, maybe 10, 15 minutes later when the sun had come up. So after the sun had already come up, the couple can be illuminated with natural light. And again, I was kind of going for that light subject on a dark background of the trees. And then I put some foreground of the grass, but I wanted it to just be a hint of foreground to kind of give it some texture, but small enough to where it wasn't distracting.
You can see that this was shot with the 70. I had on the 16 to 35. And normally when I'm shooting a wide angle lens, Mark is shooting a telephoto so that we have variety in the photos that we're delivering to our couples. And so you can see kind of the difference that those have, look how big these mountains look compared to there. And so that compression is really nice there, even though it's not as much compression as you might get if you shot at 200, but it still makes those mountains look cool. And it shows diversity in photos there.
All right, this one's yours, shot in Yosemite.
This is also Yosemite. This was sunrise. The sun's coming up. We're going for that sunburst effect on the sun. It's actually also lit. When I was taking the photo, I felt like the veil needed to be brighter and lighter and airier. And so this was another one of the scenarios where nobody understood what I was doing, but I had Mark light her veil so that you can get that nice glow, and you can see it kind of hits here stronger, but it's hitting over here as well. And I think that really gives depth to this photo.
Yeah. And I think it bounced a little bit onto her face just to kind of brighten things up in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
So 1/250 there at the sync speed, and then F11 just to get that kind of sunburst I think you were going for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
And same couple in Yosemite, but
different day.
It is an example of those Yosemite couples that are really they're committed. The harder your couples work for you, the better your photos are, and the harder that we end up working for them.
And this image was probably one of the best sunsets we've ever seen, maybe ever, but definitely one of the best in Yosemite. Classic tunnel view shot on the rocks there or the walkway, and we had just a minute or two to make this image because the clouds just lit up right as we got there, and Brenda's lighting it from I think you're over here lighting it from the right side. Yeah, we just had them walk on the wall, kind of a simple pose, classic.
And they might not have even been walking. It's kind of a narrow wall, so they could have just been fake walking, but it looks pretty natural. So maybe they were, I don't know. Sometimes you can just have them take a few steps and it still looks more like a natural pose. We really like the natural pose that go with the natural environment.
Yeah. So this was day 2 of the shoot with this couple. It was a 3-day wedding, and we wanted to do sunset at Taft Point, classic spot. And they were pretty much game for anything we asked them to do. So I asked them to climb up on this rock. And again, like we talked about earlier, just if a couple is really natural and looks good when they do active things, it works well. And this is one of our favorite images, shot with the 55 millimeter lens. It has a little bit of compression, but still kind of a medium image.
Yeah, cool, interesting light coming in, but I think that the pose really makes this shot. And so being ready and shooting those in-between moments, not just the actual poses, is something we really try to do.
Another one of my images. We had been shooting at this location, and the clouds kind of hid the mountains, so it wasn't as dramatic as we had hoped. But this beautiful kind of S-curve river, what I knew was there, and so I wanted to capture it, but we needed to get off the ground. So I flew the drone, had them walk through the grass away from the river after we had already captured some other images, and I really like kind of the S-curve combined with them moving through the frame. Yeah.
Yeah, and Mark used to climb a lot of trees in order to get high angles, and so becoming a drone pilot was a natural fit. This one is climbing up the hillside to get the higher perspective.
This is your image.
And I like the leading lines of the road and then kind of there in the road unobstructed by the rest of the landscape. You can see, this nice landscape image, and then you add the couple in it, and that's a really good spot for them.
This was like a 2-day shoot with this couple, and we knew that they were getting married in the afternoon later that day. Checking the forecast, it was looking pretty grim. So we went ahead and said, hey, let's meet at sunrise. Let's go out and get some portraits of the two of you so that when it's pouring rain later, we won't have to be trying to make images. So they were game for it, and it worked out really well because it poured rain.
Yeah, it was a beautiful sunrise, and had we not adjusted the plan, our portraits would have been soggy, rainy stuff, which was great for the ceremony, the reception, like the storytelling, the photojournalistic part of the wedding.
Yeah.
But for the portraits, it's nice to actually have good weather
and views.
And so, we always check the weather, have backup locations. We use apps to find out where the sun's going to be when and the best spots for it. I think there's another photo from this shoot here. Yeah, so this
is my image. It's a little bit more traditional, a little more posed, but the wildflowers were just epic, and I really wanted to capture something that told that story. I had them stand in the wildflowers, and because it was so tall and the grass was a little bit wet, it was kind of hard for them to move around. So I like to incorporate movement most of the time when I can, but this one was kind of static. And so I just kind of had them enjoy the view for a moment and get the classic mountain view with wildflowers.
And they're looking off at some beautiful view, right? But the direction they're looking also allows them to have that nice soft light on their faces from that sunrise.
Yeah.
And so sometimes where you have a couple look is based on where the light is going to be most flattering on them. And again, like he was talking about before in that big white space shot, having them angled so that the light is hitting both of them, so that the one person isn't blocking the light off of the other person and casting shadows. And then I guess we have a couple more. Here was me really wanting to do a silhouette.
Classic.
So that's what the goal of this one was, is let's get a silhouette. You got the sunburst, you got the nice rim light around the couple. When you do a silhouette, you want the couple to be identifiable and not just a blob. So in this case, I had them separate from each other and hold hands and be in profile. So profile is usually the best plan for silhouette.
I was going to mention the settings are a little wonky on this one. Often we're moving really quickly, and so it's okay, crank up the f-stop to get the sunburst, and the ISO was probably already up from doing something previously in some lower light conditions. And because we're working so quickly, sometimes the settings get a little wonky.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter.
No, ISO 1600 still looks great for this image.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes our goal is to just be efficient and figure out what setting we need to change for the look that we're trying to get. And so you could shoot a similar image at more clean looking settings, especially if your camera doesn't perform as well at ISO 1600. But that's what I love about the technology, is we can get away with shooting at a higher ISO. And then we, bump the f-stop back down and shoot another image in the same location that's not a silhouette. And then here's one of yours that I love.
Yeah, this was kind of a simple image. This couple was getting married somewhere else, but really wanted some iconic mountain portraits. And this is the perfect example of that. Go to a beautiful location in beautiful light and get them to do a kind of classic pose. So we just had them kind of do a little dip kiss, like we mentioned earlier, get a little bit of compression with the 55 millimeter lens. But I really like how, because I shot it at f2, it isolates the sharpness on the couple so that the background and the foreground are a little bit out of focus. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. It really helps us out.
Feel free to leave a comment below. Tell us whose photos you liked better. Clearly Mark's more technical, but I feel like I'm more creative. Let us know your thoughts below in the comments.
See you next one.